Do you still think that, because there is this public perception, that there are celebrity tapes involved in this case?
No.
Do you still think that there are minors involved in this case?
I'm certain no.
Okay.
And again, when you say this case, we're talking the criminal case.
The criminal case.
In the
correct.
criminal,
I know that.
In the criminal case,
right.
no.
Well, Bill and Sade, accepting a plea agreement would mean that Shawn Combs would have to admit to trafficking and force. And today he made it very clear that was not going to happen. Diddy maintained all along these encounters involved consenting adults and plans to take his chances that a jury agrees.
What made you come here to support Puff?
I'm supporting Puff because he's innocent, and I'm wholeheartedly believing his innocence, and I know he's innocent. So,
Well, you say you know he's innocent.
1,000%. Back up a little bit, please.
How can you support your father?
Head up, Tim.
Then how do you support him moving forward?
Y'all know what this is about. Put your hands up.
What happens is if people go into a trial believing the firepower on the prosecution is so strong, I mean, let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, it's a 95 that it's so strong, but it goes down to an 88. That helps the defense because everybody goes in thinking, wow, they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and all of a sudden, none of it's there. I think that actually helps the defense.
Isn't that, to my mind, that's one of the bigger hurdles in selecting a jury this coming week, is that there is, at least anecdotally, when I talk to people, they have that opinion, strongly held opinion, that there's celebrity tapes, that they've kind of conflated Epstein, and you mentioned Ghislaine Maxwell and all of these things into Diddy. There's this idea that somehow this is Epstein redux or something.
He knows the deck is stacked against him. They've got a ton of evidence. Take the plea deal, dude. Just take it.
Well, my guess is that, because we don't know the deal of the plea deal. At least I don't think we do.
True.
Okay. Elaborate, sometimes days-long parties by coercing victims through drugs, threats, and manipulation. They claim to have video evidence, and some of the accusations echo details from over 70 civil lawsuits filed against Combs over the last 30 years.
The last hearing before Shawn Combs' trial starts, when he walked into federal court today, he appeared to be looking for his family. They've pretty much been at all of the hearings that I've been to, but there was no presence of his sons or his mother or his sister who had previously been at those hearings.
Would you be open to a plea bargain?
Well, it's not up to me. It's up to Mr. Combs, and I don't see it happening.
Why?
Because he believes he's innocent. He believes he's innocent. And what's more, he believes that he needs to stand up, not just for himself, for his family, and for everybody who's been targeted by the federal government.
The judge saying, my concern is this is a crime that happens behind closed doors. Diddy's lawyers had argued that he had made good faith efforts by showing up in New York, ready to surrender to face these charges, but prosecutors said that he could not be trusted, that he has a history of trying to intimidate witnesses, including some who are going to be witnesses in this case. They urged the judge to remand him. She did, and when the judge did, Diddy, who was sitting at the defense table with his attorneys, did not show any signs of emotion. He took a sip of water before he was led out of the courtroom by the U.S. Marshals. Now, his lawyers have vowed to fight this. They are going to be back in court on Wednesday before the judge who will oversee this trial and try to get Diddy to be released.
Mr. Combs feels A, he's innocent, which is why he's not going to plead guilty. B, he's going to be truthful about this case because he wants to portray that to the people who have loved him his whole life. And I think he also feels an obligation to people in general. Maybe it's black people, maybe it's white people, maybe it's anybody who's ever felt aggrieved and targeted by the government. He feels an obligation to those people to say, you know what, maybe I can break the model. Maybe I can show the world that a black man can win, in federal court. And I think he probably is the only person I know of who might be able to actually accomplish that.
This is going to be such a massive trial, like maybe the biggest Hollywood trial. God knows which way it's going to go. Is it going to go on for weeks? And
for sure, weeks.
Now, as far as jury selection goes, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that both sides expect to have all of this done in the matter of 3 days. Now, given just how high profile this trial is, I was kind of stunned that they seem very confident that they will be able to seat a jury in that amount of time.
At trial, Combs will ditch the jail garb and wear ordinary clothes, as his lawyers argue the evidence shows consenting adults being intimate in their own way. The decision guarantees Combs will face trial beginning just 4 days from now that will test whether one of music's most prolific figures used his power, wealth, and fame to exploit both women and men for decades.
Federal trafficking, racketeering, and charges beginning Monday morning.
We have the latest from federal court in the Shawn Combs criminal case. Status of jury selection, what Diddy's going to be wearing, violation of a gag order, rejecting a plea offer.
I have the wildest tea, and it is so explosive that I almost dropped my phone when I heard it. You would never believe the crazy stories circling around Shawn Diddy Combs right now, and people are honestly losing their minds over it. Allegedly, there is a major courtroom drama brewing, and rumor is that Diddy, this big music mogul we all grew up listening to, is taking a stand against some heavy charges by refusing a plea deal. The talk is that he was standing right in front of Judge Aaron Submanian, the rumor says on a Thursday, and he basically said he is not going to accept any government deal offered. People say the actual words were, "Yes, I do, Your Honor," which apparently confirmed that he is seriously not backing down. Everyone who follows entertainment news closely is absolutely flipping out because this is not just about some small-time mix-up. Allegedly, there is serious prison time on the line, so this is the kind of case that people believe could go on for weeks and possibly months. Now, some say the biggest focus in all this is on 4 women who, rumor has it, have also sued Diddy in civil court. That includes none other than singer Cassandra Cassie Ventura, who apparently plans to testify under her real name, describing how she first met Diddy back in 2007 when she was younger, hoping to advance her music career. Allegedly in her lawsuit, she says that relationship turned into violence and SD. I am not a lawyer or anything, but from what I hear, SD stands for some super serious claims that the court is not taking lightly. Then there are 3 other accusers, identified as Victim 2, Victim 3, and Victim 4, and rumor is they plan to testify under anonymity, thanks to some privacy order by the judge. Another shocking rumor is that a man who says he was hired as an S-worker might share details about how these parties were possibly set up with and that one time a woman took some passed out and cameras kept rolling. People who follow this stuff say that is one of the core allegations, that there could be footage of these wild nights, which is obviously a big deal if it is real. Now, the prosecutors, from what I gather, are trying to show that Diddy orchestrated all these events with the help of paid staff and that real consent was missing. The defense attorney, rumor is his name is Jeffrey Littman, is basically telling the judge that everything was 100% among consenting adults, no one was forced, and that the participants were grown-ups who knew what they were getting into. They also say that these videos might not even be authentic, pointing to frame jumps and time-stamp issues. Plus, the defense is apparently going to mention non-disclosure agreements from the past. Allegedly, the defense believes those NDAs indicate that the accusers were already compensated, and now they are just seeking more money and attention since sentiments around SD have changed over the years. The choice to reject the plea is apparently not a big shocker to those who follow all things Diddy. The rumor is that he is super into controlling his narrative and will not ever say he forced anyone into something they did not agree to. I heard that the government wanted him to admit he forced certain individuals to do certain acts, but Diddy supposedly refused. After that, the government apparently filed notice they want enhanced penalties because one victim might have been under 18 in at least one of these recordings. That obviously is next level serious. Now, as for the nuts and bolts of this trial, rumor is that there is going to be a big jury selection process called voir dire. Allegedly, the court expects to gather maybe 200 potential jurors from the Southern District of New York, and they will grill them on their knowledge of hip-hop, what they think about SD, and whether they can stop checking the news while the trial is going. That is kind of a major ask these days, right? Since everyone is always glued to some feed. It might even end in sequestration, which is basically where a jury is isolated. People say that is a huge cost and a big stress on jurors, so we will see if that really happens. Then there is the issue of balancing privacy with an open trial, because the rumor is that in this digital age, everything can get out so fast on social media. So the judge has to figure out how to keep the process fair. When the jury is ready to roll, rumor is that the prosecution will begin by telling a big story that goes all the way back to 2003, covering alleged recording studio parties parties, the 2023 civil suits, and how those suits supposedly led to this criminal case. The plan is to show digital text chains where Diddy allegedly bragged about having power over people, plus video stills that might match up with certain messages. Some observers say the focus will be on how these parties were held out as chances to get career help or have luxurious travels, then ended in drugs, intimidation, and secret recordings that would keep people quiet. It is apparently all about proving a pattern, which prosecutors need for racketeering conspiracy. That is a big legal word that means they need to show repeated criminal activity, not just 1 or 2 random nights gone bad. On the defense side, rumor is they want to tear apart that so-called pattern by pointing out that many of these trips had no sign of wrongdoing at all. They will show text messages that sound affectionate rather than forced, and they plan to spotlight how witnesses have different versions of events. They brought in digital forensic experts who say the videos are maybe spliced in ways that hide context. Also, the defense might call people who partied with Diddy and found everything totally normal. Some watchers of big trials think that if the defense can raise enough doubt about these alleged videos, the jury might not go for the most serious charges. With technology, you never know how the court will interpret digital evidence, especially if the defense can show editing or tampering. Meanwhile, the public is going wild. Allegedly, streaming numbers for Bad Boy Records dropped nearly 12% between January and April, or at least that is what analytics firm Chart Tracer says. Big brands that used to love being all buddy-buddy with Diddy are now taking a step back. A rumor is that they are pausing or canceling deals until the legal situation is settled. Teachers are apparently using this entire story as a civics lesson, assigning kids to read the official court docs on Pacer and discuss these terms like predicate act and talk about whether Diddy can get a fair trial in the era of social media. I even heard about a 7th grade class in Brooklyn that voted to remove Diddy songs from a dance playlist until the case is finished. Some folks are outraged about that. Others think it is a good stand, so that is where we are in society right now. We also have different advocacy groups hosting rallies near the courthouse. Some are saying always believe survivors, which is their message broadening beyond just this one case. Then you have Diddy's fans chanting that a person is innocent until proven guilty, and they do not want the public to decide guilt before the court does. It is kind of tense. The judge is apparently allowing therapy dogs in the courthouse for the comfort of witnesses who say they have experienced trauma, and each witness might get to have their own consulting attorney. People say that is a new measure some courts do to protect privacy and mental health. So right now, rumor is that Diddy is being held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, doing his best to keep up with all the discovery materials. That is basically all the evidence prosecutors have, plus all the transcripts from his lawyers. People close to him say that he wants to testify, but his lawyers allegedly worry about the major risk that he could say something that cracks the defense or leads to more cross-examination about finances or private relationships. One slip-up can change a jury's entire perception. People who watch tons of trials think that high-profile defendants rarely want to take that stand, but sometimes they do if they think only their own words can set the record straight. If he gets convicted, rumor is that sentencing will happen later. The federal guidelines are complicated but revolve around how old any victim was, if there were drugs, and if recordings were used for control. I hear the appeals might revolve around whether they should have allowed Cassie's hotel footage as evidence. The defense might also argue about the credibility of certain witnesses or authenticity of the tapes. On top of that, there are allegedly more than 60 civil suits. Some say there are 65 civil suits linked to emotional distress, unpaid royalties, defamation, and all sorts of claims. People are pausing those suits until they see how the criminal side goes. The rumor is that if Diddy is found guilty, that might help the civil cases. If he is cleared, maybe the plaintiffs have less leverage, so everything is in limbo. Shareholders in various companies that partnered with Diddy are super anxious about whether these allegations and potential verdicts will tank the value of their joint ventures. Industry observers are discussing how SD investigations have rocked music before, but apparently not with so many industries. Because let's be real, Diddy has touched everything from record labels to TV, alcohol, clothing lines, sports. So the rumor is that this might be a huge case study in how one person's alleged downfall could impact a whole cultural empire. There is talk about new risk assessment deals that large companies might write up for future partnerships, basically letting them suspend or quit a contract if a performer faces these types of charges. They do not want to get caught in scandal. Some folks think that if the trial goes a certain way, it might reshape how power is handled in entertainment. Victim advocacy groups say that people have stayed quiet because their jobs, careers, or reputations were threatened by big names in the industry. But Diddy's supporters say the government is criminalizing something that was a totally private lifestyle between consenting adults. So the final decision might reflect how the community weighs personal freedom against public safety. They say opening statements begin around May 5, 2025. Prosecutors think they need 6 weeks or so, and the defense expects about 3. The The rumor is that they will skip court on federal holidays, but they might push through summer Fridays to wrap things up sooner. If the jury deliberations go late, we might not see a verdict until at least July. And of course, people say that no matter what, the testimony will be dissected by analysts online. Because this hits on so many big topics: fame, influence, alleged exploitation, and the question of who owns creative legacies in this digital era. Until that verdict is read, two main narratives are floating around. One is that Diddy says these people were all adults who agreed to whatever happened. The other is that these accusers say they had no real choice and that they were shown or threatened with these recordings. If Diddy is convicted, he could be behind bars for a big chunk of his life. If he is acquitted, some people will be relieved and others might still believe the allegations. Some say it boils down to whether being famous can still shield you or not once the justice system steps in. The prosecution has more than 20 years of texts, videos, statements, and cross-exams that they want to show the jury, while the defense wants to say it was all consenting or is being twisted for money. They plan to open with 22 years of data, from around 2003 to now, covering all sorts of private messages, flight records, studio logs. The rumor is that everything lines up to paint a story of manipulative behavior. They specifically want to show how each piece of data has a date stamp that might match up with these four accusers. Cassandra Cassie Ventura is apparently witness number one. She will talk about meeting Diddy as a teenager in the early days of her singing hopes, and she might say that over time she ended up in these terrifying nights full of fear. Prosecutors have text messages, they say, with Diddy offering her career boosts, followed by logs from hotel security that show they were in the same place before a certain video was recorded. Then we have victim 2, who was invited to what she believed was a networking event in Miami, only to end up feeling disoriented days later. Prosecutors claim her bruising and a medical exam line up with her story. Victim 3 has a story about a flight to Los Angeles, where phones were taken away and cameras allegedly rolled all night. Victim 4 apparently ties in the under-18 angle, which might create mandatory sentencing if the jury believes her timeline. The prosecution also lined up a former travel coordinator, a digital forensics specialist, a studio engineer, a financial crimes agent, and a few others as supporting witnesses. All of them might confirm booking codes for flights, how the footage was supposedly secured, or how payouts connected to times when a witness threatened to go public. The defense says they are going to question chain of custody for all this data. They want to show that Cassie once said great things about Diddy in an interview. They plan to point out that victim 2 waited a while before going to the police after a hospital visit. And about the tapes, they have an imaging expert who says the lighting differences prove someone edited them. They also have NDAs that they claim show people signed up for these parties willingly. They might also bring a bunch of receipts showing large payments and say that it was a mutual arrangement. The judge plans to seat the jurors by May 15. Each juror has to promise they will not look at social media. We all know how hard that is. Moderators online are apparently deleting posts that try to guess who the jurors might be. If it runs long, the trial could inch into August, because racketeering plus SD could easily lead to 40 years in prison. Even if the jury believes only parts of the case, that can still lead to 20 or so years. This means real stakes. Public fallout is continuing. Bad Boy songs see less streaming every day. Rumor is another 7% dip in April. Some satellite radio channels removed his music, and some major online petitions are calling on liquor stores to drop his vodka brand. Another group says the man is innocent until proven guilty, so they feel the boycott is out of line. At concerts, DJs are facing pressure to remove Diddy's songs or barely play them. Meanwhile, record execs are drafting new clauses in their deals allowing them to freeze royalties if an artist is indicted for SD. Some are requiring a moral turpitude clause that applies specifically to felony allegations like these. They say it is expensive to handle PR nightmares, and insurers want these disclaimers. Looking at law schools, rumor is they are using this as a real-time example of how digital evidence is used in modern criminal cases. Students are learning how personal text threads can become a primary exhibit in a conspiracy narrative. One law clinic built a timeline tool that lines up flight receipts with the text messages to see if the government's version of events is consistent. Meanwhile, some public policy folks are discussing whether longer sentences reduce SD or if it just pushes it more underground. The civil suits, from what the rumor mill says, total around 65. The attorneys for the plaintiffs are apparently waiting to see if Diddy is found guilty, because that could make their arguments stronger. On the other hand, if he is acquitted, some people might negotiate a settlement to avoid indefinite litigation. But the rumor is that it all depends on how many resources Diddy has left after paying his defense team, because these top-tier lawyers do not come cheap. One key aspect is that the government claims to have a huge trove of digital evidence. Millions of files, they say, including text messages, online backups, and possibly logs from streaming sites. The rumor is that only a small part will be shown to the jury, but the rest could be fueling a ton of media speculation. Prosecutors say the chosen clips point to a pattern of recruitment, isolation, and threats. The defense says that the same footage in full context shows happiness, mutual enjoyment, or plain old consenting fun. So the jury has to decide which side to believe. Diddy's publicist apparently says he sees this as the moment to clear all these rumors that have followed him so long. Sources say he keeps up with transcripts from the daily proceedings in his cell and is debating whether to take the stand himself. Trial watchers are 50-50 on whether that is a good idea. Some say that a direct denial from the star is the only way to truly refute these claims. Others say that one misstatement can send the jury into the prosecution's corner. Prosecutors would love to question him about everything from finances to details about who else might have been at these parties. If the jury says guilty, rumor is the Justice Department will push for a heavier sentence because of the alleged minor and the involvement of drugs. Diddy might also be required to pay restitution, which can add up to millions. If he walks out free, he will come back to an industry that has basically watched the entire case unfold. Some brand experts say he could possibly rebuild his name if he does some big philanthropic gestures against SD. Others say that the public is less forgiving in this day and age, so it is complicated. Historians are already calling this a major moment in hip-hop because Diddy was so influential, not just in music but in TV, clothing, and beverages. Some say it could mirror earlier times when allegations rocked the industry, but this might be bigger because of how many businesses he was linked to. People are saying that some kids only found out about Diddy from these court stories and learned about his music after the fact, which flips the usual path of discovering an artist. Once the trial goes deep into the summer, the jury might start deliberating. They will have instructions about which laws define racketeering, what exactly SD is, and how to apply reasonable doubt. If they ask for replays of specific videos, that might signal that they are uncertain about certain evidence. If they knock out a verdict really fast, that sometimes means the decision was more straightforward than expected. But if they take forever, that often means they are stuck. Regardless, the conversation outside the courtroom will not end, because this has sparked a huge debate about the lines between normal adult choices and alleged criminal exploitation. In a couple states, rumor is that lawmakers are drafting new bills that would give survivors of SD more time to file legal actions. Some activists also want to see disclaimers on streaming services for artists who are under indictment for these kinds of charges, but free speech groups do not feel that is the right move. Before all these allegations, Diddy was known for his unstoppable confidence. Now that confidence is facing the biggest test, as prosecutors have sworn statements, times, dates, and more. Diddy's supporters believe he is just a big personality who liked to party, and that the prosecutors are spinning it the worst way possible. The accusers say they were trapped in a system that used intimidation to keep them silent. 12 people, presumably from everyday walks of life, will look at more than 2 decades of alleged texts, video bits, and sworn testimony and choose which version they find convincing. Their final word will shape how we remember Diddy's contributions to music and popular culture. More specifically, rumor is that the prosecutors will detail 22 years' worth of messages, saying they draw a line from 2003 to 2025 that shows how Diddy allegedly built a whole empire on controlling people with money, drugs, and camera footage. Each text, they say, includes date stamps matching specific nights that the 4 main accusers describe. First on the stand, some say, will be Cassie, going by Cassandra Ventura. She might lay out how, when she was a teenager, she was starstruck by Diddy's success, and then got pulled into a world that seemed glamorous until it turned terrifying, or so the prosecutors insist. They claim they will show logs that place both Cassie and Diddy in the same hotel suite hours before some of these alleged SD recordings happened. Then there is victim 2 with that Miami trip story. Allegedly, she took pink pills offered at a party, blacked out, and had no idea where she was the next morning. The rumors say that her medical records show bruises and an elevated drug level consistent with her claims. Victim 3 apparently is the one with that Big Los Angeles house story, involving phone confiscations and all-night cameras. Victim 4 might bring in the under 18 factor because she allegedly turned 18 right after the events but was still a minor at the time. The government's supporting witnesses include the travel coordinator who might confirm that flights were always booked under fake names, a digital forensic expert who says the metadata shows no editing, a studio engineer who says Diddy bragged about having compromising footage to keep people loyal, and someone from a financial crimes office who says they found suspicious money transfers around the times people threatened to go public. The defense expects to attack each piece vigorously, saying the investigators basically pieced it together from random tips, might not have used official channels, and that Cassie in particular stayed in a partnership with Diddy for years, so they ask how it could have been all fear and no love. People also mention there were interviews in fashion magazines where Cassie was praising him, so the defense is ready to wave those around in court. They will also emphasize that victim 2 delayed reporting. The imaging expert for the defense is set on proving lighting changes that show the tapes are spliced together. NDAs and payments might also come up as proof that these were adult deals. Judge Submanian wants the jury in place by mid-May. If they keep to schedule, opening statements might happen in the same month, but if they run into hitches, it could push back. Social media watchers suspect that as soon as the trial starts, more details from every corner of Diddy's life could spill out. The real question is how the judge and the lawyers will handle that avalanche of attention. Some insiders say that if the judge feels the jury is in danger of being swayed too much by the outside world, we may see more sealed documents or partial gag orders. That leads to fresh questions about transparency. Quietly, some folks have pointed out how pricey it is to sequester a jury for weeks, especially in a place like New York. But others say that with a case this big, the expense might be necessary to maintain fairness. If the jury decides he is guilty, the rumor is that the penalty for racketeering plus SD with a minor could be 40 years or more. Some think a partial conviction could still lead to 20 or more. If he is found not guilty, the entire story might blow up in a different way, with the defense proclaiming that justice was served. Public reaction could be wild in either scenario. At the moment, streaming dips are happening. Another 7% or so in April, according to the talk from analytics dashboards. A major satellite channel dropped Diddy's curated hours. Meanwhile, 2 million people apparently signed a petition for liquor stores to pull his vodka brand. Another group wants to stand by him until the facts are decided. Situation is complicated. Now, concert DJs feel caught in the middle. Some fade out any Diddy track quickly, others avoid it altogether. Record label bosses are apparently adding brand new clauses in their deals that let them freeze an artist's pay if charges pop up. The rumor is that big European festivals want that language specifically. Managers say it might hamper creative freedom, but insurance companies want to protect themselves from fiascos and lost sponsorship deals if legal troubles arise. At law schools, rumor is that they are analyzing each new government filing, because it is a perfect lesson on how technology can be turned into evidence in big trials. Some students built an app that lines up the alleged timeline with flight logs to see how tight the alleged conspiracy is. Public policy courses are focusing on how sentencing guidelines might or might not help reduce SD. Civil lawsuits have stacked up to about 65 or so. Sources from the plaintiff's side are apparently waiting for the jury to decide the criminal matter first. If there is a conviction, it really tips the scale. If there is not, it might push toward settlements or even total dismissals. Diddy has many business assets, though no one really knows how liquid or how tied up they are, so if huge settlements come, that could damage him financially big time. Then rumor has it that the digital footprint in this case is enormous. Over 2 million files, they say, covering text backups, cloud data, and logs from streaming attempts. Only a small fraction is going to be shown in court, but that fraction has media folks buzzing. The prosecutors believe it all lines up to show a pattern of controlling, possibly even humiliating, environment. The defense says the same items, if shown fully, would give a different story of consenting grown-ups letting loose. So the jury has to figure out which side is right. In terms of personal info from Diddy, the rumor is that he has a publicist putting out statements that he is determined to speak his truth in court if necessary. But supposedly, his legal advisors are telling him every day that once you get on the stand, there is no going back, and cross-examination can feature anything. Some folks note that big names in the past have avoided testifying because it can backfire. Others say the jury might want to hear from him directly, or else they will think he is hiding. A guilty verdict might bring heavy guidelines, especially if the jury accepts that a minor was involved and that there were drugs used to coerce or control. The government could also ask for restitution in the tens of millions of dollars. If the jury says not guilty, Diddy could come out of this looking to restore his image, but the question is how the public will respond. Times have changed, and many believe that if multiple accusers step forward, a not guilty might not fix everything in the court of public opinion. So that is the gamble for Diddy. Some music scholars say that hip-hop has faced controversies before, but none that touched so many business sectors. Diddy's brand is not just about producing hits, it is about clothing lines, big TV shows, fragrance lines, sports, and beverages. So if he falls from grace, the rumor is that it might truly ripple across a ton of markets. People are also talking about how the younger generation does not remember peak Diddy. They only see him now through this controversy. So it changes how a legend is perceived. Sometime around July, if everything goes according to schedule, the jury might begin to deliberate. They will have instructions on what exactly racketeering is, as well as what the law says about SD. They have to keep in mind reasonable doubt. They might ask for certain evidence to be played back. Observers say a quick verdict might mean clarity, while a slow verdict could mean disagreement. In the end, no matter how it goes, the conversation about celebrity consent and corporate accountability is going to continue. Word is that legislators in at least 2 places are writing new bills to give more time for survivors of SD to file legal actions. Some want streaming services to add disclaimers on an artist's profile if they are under felony indictment. Others say that is overkill and might harm free speech. Diddy's music once pumped up the party with total confidence, but now we are seeing if that confidence can stand up to sworn testimony and forensics. His supporters say he was a visionary, while his accusers say he hid behind his power to do wrong. The jury's choice could shape how we remember him and might even change the future of entertainment deals. Because if the jury says these allegations fit together into a criminal conspiracy, that verdict could echo in countless contracts and brand partnerships for years to come. People who watch this trial say that it is less about the little details and more about the big message. If you're powerful, do you get away with stuff or do you not? So that is where we are, babes. It is like a sprawling saga with so many moving parts. The rumor is that the prosecution is just going to line up 22 years of receipts, texts, flight bookings, hotel logs, videos, and the testimonies of 4 accusers who each have their own version of how it went down. Meanwhile, the defense says it can poke holes in each piece of evidence, questioning the authenticity of the footage or pointing to contradictory statements. One side says big-time manipulation went on, the other side says it was all just adult fun that people regret now. And apparently, everything from the next big brand endorsements to the future of certain vodka lines hangs in the balance, because the public can turn on a dime based on the final verdict. Let me expand more on that 2003 to 2023 timeline, since rumor is that is a big part of the government's opening statement. They want to show that these alleged patterns of SD did not just happen once or twice. They want to show it is basically a decades-long plan, with Diddy using his fame and money to attract people for partying, then using intimidation to keep them from talking. Prosecutors might read out old text messages that show him telling a staffer to get a certain drug or set up certain camera angles. They might reveal internal messages that show that some staffers were uneasy but still went along because he was their boss. If that is accurate, it could be really damaging for the defense. But again, the defense's approach is that a lot of these messages are taken out of context, and that if they had the full threads, it would be clear these were normal social gatherings. I hear that the digital forensic team for the prosecution has spent months verifying that the timestamps on these photos or video clips do line up with Cassie and the others' timelines. One rumor is that they found flights from Diddy's official travel agent that match the exact date that Cassie says she was in a certain city where a specific video was recorded. The rumor is also that they have discovered financial transfers that line up with hush money or NDAs. The defense says those NDAs were standard for high-profile gatherings to protect brand secrets or to keep new music or surprise business deals from leaking. They say it had nothing to do with SD, so both sides are spinning the same details in opposite ways. Folks in the legal field highlight that racketeering is typically used for organized crime, but can also be used to show a pattern of allegedly criminal behavior in entertainment circles. The government wants to prove that Diddy basically ran a sort of enterprise with staff he paid to lure in women, keep them supplied with drugs, and film them. If that is believed, it might indeed fit the pattern for racketeering. But if the defense can show it was all consenting adults and the staff was simply running normal events, then maybe it is not certain the jury will convict. This is exactly why watchers say the videos might be the biggest factor. If the jury sees something that looks forced, or if someone is clearly incapacitated, that might sway them. But if the videos do not look that way, the defense can say the claims are exaggerated. Word is that some big music streaming platforms are bracing for either massive boycotts or massive nostalgia plays if the trial ends in an acquittal. Some insiders predict that if Diddy is found not guilty, you might see a wave of social media support calling for everyone to stream 90s and 2000s classics. Others think that public opinion might stay sour no matter what. Meanwhile, legal analysts say that if certain videos become public, it might cause sensational headlines that overshadow the rest of the evidence. The judge might try to keep them from being fully leaked, but it is 2025, so if it is in the courtroom, it often ends up out in the world eventually. Now, teachers using this as a civics lesson have students follow daily updates on the docket, look up the definitions of terms, and reflect on how a fair trial can exist in a world with instant social media. One class in Brooklyn apparently started a debate about whether they can separate Diddy's art from these allegations. Some kids said that if something this serious is out there, they do not want to dance to the music. Others said you have to wait for a conviction, so it is not a neat conversation. People are definitely divided. The rallies near the courthouse also represent that divide. One side says, believe survivors. The other side says, do not cast guilt in the press. It is basically a microcosm of the entire cultural moment, with concerns about trauma, power, and the possibility of a wrongful conviction if the public is too quick to judge. The judge letting therapy dogs in is something new. People have strong opinions on it. Some say it is great for helping everyone remain calm. Others believe it is too soft for a serious trial. But if it helps the witnesses be able to speak openly, that might be a good move. People who say they know Diddy from inside the detention center claim he is anxious but determined. He apparently flips through transcripts, highlights key lines, and keeps meeting with lawyers. He might feel like taking the stand is the only chance to show the jury his side in his own words. But the lawyers keep reminding him that cross-examination could dig into finances or personal relationships. That might open up brand new lines of questioning that the prosecution has not used yet. It is a gamble. People also note that big celeb cases from the past show that once a star is on the stand, the entire dynamic can change. The jury might watch them closely, searching for any sign of arrogance or lies, or the star might come across as genuine and sway them. If found guilty, the rumor is that we might see a sentencing hearing that focuses on all sorts of extra factors, especially that under-18 piece and the possibility that recordings were used for blackmail or control. Those aggravate the charges, so it would not just be a light sentence. Then the appeals might be about how certain tapes were allowed in or certain testimony was permitted. The criminal side could be tied up in appeals for years. Meanwhile, the civil side would likely escalate if the government gets a conviction, because that provides a standard of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is much higher than the civil standard. People also say that many brand partnerships might vanish, or his music catalog value could drop. If he is acquitted, the civil suits might still happen, but the plaintiffs will not have the weight of a conviction on their side. So the final outcome is huge. Observers say that the bigger issue is how it might change entertainment partnerships going forward. Already, rumor is that major corporations have updated their deals to say that if you get indicted, they can cut ties without penalty. Some folks worry about false allegations harming the innocent. Others think that is the only way to hold big names accountable. The entire music world is apparently watching, and so are folks who produce TV shows, clothing lines, and sports endorsements. They want to see what the final verdict is. Power dynamics in entertainment might never be the same, say experts. If the trial reveals that hooking up with strong gatekeepers can lead to secret recordings or exploitation, more artists might demand safer environments. Meanwhile, if Diddy is cleared, there might be a discussion about how rumors can ruin your brand, so both sides are using it to push their narratives. Everyone is waiting for the real conclusion. The official schedule says opening statements start on May 5, 2025, and the prosecution plans to present for 6 weeks. The defense says they need 3. They will skip federal holidays but might work a lot of Fridays. That means the earliest we might get this all finished is sometime in late July, possibly August if the jury needs more time. By then, the entire world will have formed strong opinions. Some experts say it will be extremely hard to keep a lid on social media commentary. The rumor is that the judge might threaten anyone in the gallery who tries to record with phones, but that does not always stop leaks. The storyline is just too big. Big money, big fame, big allegations. Many see it as a test of whether the law can handle alleged sexual misconduct that spans so many years and involves so many fancy events. There is a question about how you prove what happened at a private party 20 years ago. The prosecution's reliance on digital records is new for this type of entertainment case. Those text chains and videos are everything. The defense insists those have been manipulated. So the jury must decide if the government's forensic experts are correct that the data is authentic, or if there is enough reason to doubt. No matter the decision, it will echo. Brands will either step away entirely or try to rebuild. People who used to see him as an untouchable figure might have to rethink how they view admired celebrities. And if he gets off, it might stand as a major example of a celeb beating allegations. Either way, folks watching from the outside are glued to new headlines. Some are outraged that old music is being pulled. Others say it is the right step until the case is settled. You cannot make everyone happy. We have also got activists out there talking about how these big cases highlight the difference between legal guilt and moral accountability. People can be acquitted but still lose in the court of public opinion. Conversely, if found guilty, supporters sometimes claim the system was unfair, so I expect a lot of heated arguments. Some sponsors are already hinting they might not come back to him even if he is found not guilty, because that shadow might still be too strong. There is a concern about how the minors aspect will play out, because that usually draws a firm line with many fans. Even an allegation of that can be too much to come back from, so we will see. Law students are calling this a landmark case for the intersection of culture, technology, and justice. They see it as a real-time lesson on how cell phone footage, text messages, and social media posts can be the backbone of a conspiracy trial. They talk about how it all started from civil lawsuits that spurred a criminal investigation. Then the government stepped in with more power to subpoena evidence and gather digital footprints. So it is a big deal. Some people even believe that the entire entertainment world might get rattled by the final outcome, causing more scrutiny when big stars throw these lavish parties. Meanwhile, the mainstream public is soaking it all in. People share rumors on social platforms about the teenage angle, or about hush money, or about these NDAs. The conversation is complicated by the fact that no one except the prosecutors, defense team, and maybe the judge has seen every shred of evidence. So people are forming opinions on partial glimpses. Then the rallies at the courthouse pit those who have experienced trauma and want to see convictions for SD against fans who idolize Diddy and like his philanthropic achievements. The tension is thick. Some folks also mention that Diddy's business empire includes a clothing brand, a brand of vodka, some TV productions, a sports management link, and more. If he gets locked up, that empire might crumble or get sold or find new owners. People say that folks behind the scenes are already rearranging deals to plan for that possibility, because corporations do not like instability. On the other hand, if he is acquitted, he might try to come back strong, sign new artists, or put out more music, but it might be an uphill battle for acceptance. At the end of the day, the biggest question in the rumor mill is how the jury will weigh the testimonies of Cassie, Victim 2, Victim 3, and Victim 4. If the jury believes them wholeheartedly, the defense is in a tight spot. If the jury thinks those stories have inconsistencies, Diddy could get a not guilty verdict. Then the videos are also so crucial. If they reveal scenes that obviously look forced or show someone unconscious, that is tough to defend. But if it is unclear or heavily edited, doubt might creep in. That is why they say the digital forensic battles will be intense. The next big date is May 5, 2025 for opening statements if all goes on schedule. Prosecutors will say it was a pattern of wrongdoing for over 2 decades. Defense will say it was consenting adults or, at worst, regrets from certain individuals. Some predict it might be one of the longest, most talked about entertainment trials in years. Because no matter which side you are on, it is a huge story about fame, power, and how the justice system deals with complicated adult relationships. So that is it, bestie. This is the entire lowdown about Shawn Diddy Combs. It is massive, complicated, and loaded with allegations, evidence, digital footprints, brand deals, and more. It is basically a culture-shifting event. If the jury convicts him, the rumor is it could be 40 years. If they do not, the rumor is it might still chill the industry because the accusations alone have done damage. Either way, the takeaway is that we are living in a time where people are less willing to look the other way when these stories surface. Girl, I hope I broke it down in a way that feels like we just had a big old chat on everything that has been happening. It is going to be a roller coaster. The rumor is that if more evidence comes to light, it might push the public conversation even further. Meanwhile, I bet we will all be hearing the next update soon. All right, guys, follow me for more of the latest gossip.